So the IBM Center for Applied Insights recently did a study where they were talking to different organizations about their success with their mobile development projects. And I think the results here are shocking to some people because what they found is that only 1/3 of mobile projects are successful. So 1/3. So let's think about that for a second. So if you're like most organizations and you've got, somewhere between maybe 10 and 20 different mobile projects on the go or in the docket, if only 1/3 of those successful, say you've just got 10, that's only 3 projects that are going to be successful and maybe, 6 or 7 that are not going to be as successful as they should be. So that's a pretty shocking stat. And obviously represents a lot of cost and a lot of overhead and a lot of work that's done for very little value. So if we actually dive in to that number and start to think about why it is that mobile projects are unsuccessful, we can kind of see that things break down into 3 categories. So first of all, development, mobile projects can be unsuccessful if your development is over budget. So this can be for a number of reasons. Maybe it's just taking you, too many people to get this mobile application out the door. There's just so much code to write and there's just so much work that needs to be done on the testing side. There's a number of ways that this development can be over budget, but for some reason it's just costing you a lot more than you were expecting. Another way that your project is unsuccessful is if it just takes you too long to get your mobile application out the doors, and so delivery is late. And so this might be because it's just, there's a lot of friction between, for example, moving your mobile application from its development environments into test environments and into production and getting feedback from your beta users. There's lots of different reasons why this can be, but for some reason your delivery is late, you're not getting it out to your users as quickly as you need to. And then lastly, maybe you get your mobile application out the door, maybe you even get it out the door on time, but for some reason it's failing to satisfy your users. So it's not having the impact that you were expecting it to have, and it's not seeing the kind of uptake and benefits that you were hoping or that it was designed to have. And so it's failing to satisfy these users. It's a third way in which your mobile project can be unsuccessful. So what I want to do is in the context of a kind of your worst case scenario project here, where all 3 of these characteristics are true, I want to take a look at how the IBM MobileFirst Platform in conjunction with the IBM DevOps infrastructure can help make sure that this does not happen to you, right? So that across each of these 3 different categories of things that can go wrong, so that you can be protected against this to make sure that your projects are actually ones that are successful. So if we start at the beginning, we think about what it means for development to be in budget and what the mobile first platform can provide to help this to be the case. Really, we start to think about all of those capabilities that are part of your app that you might not have even realized that you needed to implement at the beginning of your project, right? Or that they would take so long. So things like app security, integration into your back-end systems, the ability to send push notifications across multiple device types seamlessly, and the list goes on and on. These are all capabilities that are built into the IBM MobileFirst platform for you just to leverage out of the box in the development of your mobile app to make sure that you're spending your time on the things that are most important for your audiences and that make your app unique instead of having to just reinvent the wheel on all of these capabilities, problems that IBM has solved and you can take advantage of. So that's kind of helping you get your development to be within budget. If we jump to the end and we think about that idea of apps, satisfying our users, the IBM MobileFirst platform is loaded with capabilities that give you a very precise understanding of how your users are using your apps, what they're liking, what they're not liking, the ability to monitor public app stores for sentiment analysis to see what kind of feedback people are providing in the public domain so that you can address that very quickly, and maybe even doing something like pushing out an update to your app seamlessly to their mobile device without them even having to go and request the updated version to take advantage of fixes that you've built into based on some of this feedback you've received. So like I said, mobile first platform loaded with these capabilities to make sure that your apps satisfy your users once you get them out to market. So now if we think about that middle section, all about that release and that ability to get these apps out on time, this is where we really see the value of the IBM DevOps infrastructure in conjunction with the mobile first platform to give you that benefit of making sure that the delivery of your apps is on time. And the IBM DevOps infrastructure is loaded with capabilities here that really help you get your apps out on time. Things like build automation, so seamlessly getting your builds out to your testers when you need to, as code is being checked in by a development team. Release management to ensure that moving between the phases of your development lifecycle is seamless. Automated testing, deployment visualization. So how do you understand what versions of the apps are available in each of your different environments at this, all at once, without having to, resort to spreadsheets and making sure that information on these multiple spreadsheets is kept up to date all the time. like I said, tons of capabilities inside of the IBM DevOps infrastructure here to make sure that your delivery of your mobile application project is successful. Now, what we actually find though is that when you go ahead and solve all three of these problems together, there's a synergy that you get to be the beneficiary of. So that your development is not just on budget, but your development can maybe even be under budget. Or your app is not just satisfying your users, but it's actually loved by your users. You're creating apps that your users want to use because they're solving the problems that they're having, right? And then lastly, maybe your development or your delivery is not just on time, but what would it be like for your delivery of these mobile applications to be early? Right? Can you imagine that? And the best part is that you solve this for one project. You build your application with the MobileFirst Platform and IBM DevOps for one project. You get to repeat this across all of those, 10 to 20 projects that you've got in your backlog, getting the same benefits across each of these projects that you had in that first project. And so really becomes an incredibly valuable mechanism for making sure that you're successful in your mobile project. So instead of everyone else having their 1/3 of their projects being successful, you get to have 3/3 of your mobile projects be successful, and all of the business benefit that entails.